The Thunder Warriors are probably one of the most iconic groups of the Unification Wars. They were the proto-Space Marines and were used by the Emperor to bring the warring clans of Earth under control. But what about their adversaries? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to kitbash a Techno Barbarian Warlord. The basis of this kitbash was the new Ogre Tyrant model. It had both the size to represent a human who'd undergone genetic alterations and the aesthetics to kickstart that barbarian appearance. But he was still lacking that technological aspect. After all, even though the Techno Barbarians are viewed as being barbarians, they often had access to a wealth of high-tech equipment and weaponry from the Dark Age of technology, and would even regularly trade with the Forges of Mars. And I began recreating this technological aspect with the addition of some bionic augmentations. I took this foot from the Necromunda Ogren Servitus kit and compared it against the left knee. There was a small tab present that needed to be ground down with my rotary tool. After a quick comparison, I then went back and forth between the inside of the pad and the knee joint of the leg until the two were lining up nicely, at which point I glued the bionic leg in place. While I still had the servitor kit to hand, I grabbed one of the right-handed power fists and removed part of the servo arm from it. As I wanted to use one of the original Tyrant arms alongside this power fist, I had to first saw away the wrist from the Tyrant's arm. After a quick comparison, I also found that the wrist of the arm also needed a little trimming. When I was happy with how the two parts lined up, I glued the arm to the torso, followed by the fist to the arm. While I was aiming to create a warlord with a larger stature than most humans, I didn't want my model to just look like an ogre or ogryn, and a big part of this appearance came in the facial features. I could have covered the face entirely, but with the bare shoulders, I think that would have looked a little odd. So instead, I went for a half mask. Something that would cover most of the face and just leave the mouth visible, and this would be created from the face masks of the Karenite Ogryns from the Horus Heresy range. Starting with one of the pieces that have the mask open, I carefully removed the mask and left myself with some excess. The two halves were glued together and compared against the Tyrant's head. Further trims were then made with frequent comparisons until it was fitting nicely in place. But I didn't glue just yet. I realized a little late that the head I was using had no ears, as it was designed to be used with a helmeted head. So I quickly grabbed another Tyrant head, clipped away the top knot, and glued the new helmet over the top. The next stage of the build was pretty straightforward, as I just used the original Tyrant parts to fill in some of the remaining structural details of the model. I removed some Ogre Moortribe symbols from the back plate before attaching this, the gut plate, bag, and left arm in place. Now, regardless of if you're a hardcore tabletop gamer, or like me, your main focus is the hobby side of wargaming, then you're going to hit the same problem. Safely storing or transporting your miniatures, which is where friends of the channel, Tabletop Stronghold, come in. If you've seen me talk about them in previous videos, then you may recognize this Magcase 2.0 here. But the wizards over at the Stronghold have been hard at work producing this, the Magcase 3.0. Like with the previous version, the Magcase 3.0 is a magnetic carrying case that also doubles up as both a safe way to store or even display your laboriously painted miniatures, thanks to the clear perspex window in the front. And through this window, you can see my ever-growing collection of raptors, a detail that Tabletop Stronghold has made a nod to with this custom engraving that they did for me, along with this new Art Deco-inspired style that comes with the 3.0. But there have also been a couple of really nice improvements over the previous version. The first of these are the magnetic clasps that keep the door closed instead of the Velcro straps, which did the job, but were a little fiddly. The grooves that hold the shelves are also now color-coded to make lining up the trays much easier. Speaking of the shelves, another improvement Tabletop Stronghold have made is the replacement of the two locking struts of MDF with a strip of strong magnets at the rear of the case that will keep your metal trays firmly in place but not completely inaccessible. And it's these steel trays that allow me to magnetize the bases of my minis and keep them firmly in place and safe from being rattled around during transport. And that's not all. Taking your case to your games is even easier thanks to this perfectly sized carry case that Tabletop Stronghold have released to accompany the Magcase 3.0. It can be worn as a backpack or even hooked over your suitcase handle. It also has a bunch of pockets to keep all those rulebooks, tokens, and dice in one place. But if your priority is safe storage, then you can now easily stack and lock multiple cases together to suit your needs. These changes have made an already great case even better. And if you want to give the Magcase 3.0 from Tabletop Stronghold a go, then just click on my link in the comments and description. They also offer free shipping to the US, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and most of the EU. The case will arrive disassembled, but if you've ever successfully managed to assemble a piece of flat pack furniture, you'll have no trouble with it. And speaking of assembly, let's continue with our Techno Barbarian. Those last few steps had tipped the balance towards Barbarian a little too much though, so I needed to rein things back in with more techie gubbins. I started out with this piece of Ogren servitor equipment. After clipping away the handle, I glued it to the gut plate where it would form part of a rebreather system. For the rest of it, I returned to the Karenite Ogren's kit and grabbed the unused pipes and gas mask from the head I'd used earlier on. Part of the base of the gas mask was clipped away and the pipe was steadily reduced in size until it could fit between the mask and the box I'd glued to the waist. With the mask to one side, it gave the model the appearance of making use of the device as necessary rather than it being a permanent requirement. And I wasn't done with the bionics either. Armed with one of these backpack add-ons from the Space Marine Hellblasters, I carefully removed the 3 cylinders before drilling 1mm holes directly through the middle of each. More holes were then drilled along the Tyrant's spine. These holes would be used to hold 1mm metal wires that would pin the cylinders in place. The contact points against the back weren't perfect, so this would just provide a little more resilience. Into these cylinders, I would next add these flexible cables from Zinj Industries. After drilling 3 more holes into the back of the Warlord's head, I then clipped, bent and superglued those cables between the spine and the head. But before I went and added any more details, I first had to cover up and fill in some of the leftover gaps and unwanted details. To do this, I first mixed up some putty, specifically QuickType from Tamiya. It works the same as green stuff, but is a little easy to work with and can be sanded down and filed down once it's dry. After mixing up a small batch, it was left to partly cure for about 30 minutes to help it better hold the shape and reduce the stickiness a little. Now that it was a better consistency, I rolled out a couple of long thin sausages and laid one across the gut plate. This was then carefully pressed and flattened out into a thick strap, and I made use of a little Vaseline throughout the process to stop the putty from sticking to my fingers and tools. With the first strap in place, the process was repeated with a second. These straps helped to further separate the conversion from the base model, whilst also masking a few gaps here and there. Speaking of gaps, the helmet looked a little too small perched upon the Tyrant's head, with nothing around it. So to fix this, I created a sort of flight cap by pressing in more of the putty between the helmet and around the ears. This was then carefully shaped so that it hung down to the neck, either side of the ears. Then, to add a little extra detail, some very thin strands were rolled out and laid vertically and at even spacings across the cap. These weren't entirely necessary, but would offer a little extra detail to paint later on. With the putty in place, it was then allowed to cure fully overnight, at which point I was able to further smooth and shape the straps when the flight cap with some fine grit sandpaper. With the belt complete, I could continue to add more technological details, such as this comms pack from the Skari kit. After clipping away the aerials and the hanging cable, I then glued it to the back of the model. I attached it to the hanging rings left over from those details that I removed earlier. This simply helped to better incorporate the new piece into the original model. For a few more details, I dipped into my spare part Emporium range of kit and grabbed a few pouches from the Sorcerer's Spoils. These were attached to the belts that I'd sculpted on, along with a hand taken from the dead animal bits. I first removed the ring from the top and glued it between the pouches I'd already mounted before adding a third. All that was left to do now was to just fill in the gap where the banner pole would normally be attached. This would be fixed without that servo arm I'd removed from the Power Fist earlier on. I further trimmed it down until it could fit into that blank space, which meant that I could finally attach the model to its base along with some chunks of cork floor tile to represent some rocks. To give the base just a tiny little bit more detail, I then grabbed a few Citadel skulls and scattered these among the rocks. A few of these were cut down to represent them being half buried before being glued into place, and with that, I could start the painting. When it came to the painting, I decided to follow the example set by John Blanche's artwork of the Techno Barbarians, which essentially meant that I would need a lot of warmer and earthier tones. As a result, my very own Dead Animal Bit spray primer seemed like the best place to start, as it provided me with a lighter starting colour that I could adjust with washes later on. For the remaining paints, I decided to use the Army Painter's John Blanche paint sets, specifically their Volume 1 and 2. These had already curated the kind of colours that you see in those original Techno Barbarian paintings, which took the hassle out of it for me. Cooler tones like blues are not frequently seen in those pieces, but I wanted something to help the warmer colours contrast against, so I settled on using some of the turnbull turquoise over the trousers and arm coverings. These areas remained in the recesses, so the finished blue would be much less prominent. Now, this particular paint is a speed paint. It's similar in form to Games Workshop's contrast paint and Vallejo's express color range, in the sense that when applied over a light base color like this, the paint provides a very saturated finish extremely quickly, whilst also pooling more heavily in the recesses to create shadows and pulling away from the hard edges to create highlights. After allowing the first coat to dry, I then mixed together some ivory white and turnbull turquoise, which created a pale bluish grey that had a similar hue to the original coat but was lighter and less saturated. By mixing it with regular paint, I also had a thicker consistency that allowed me to pick out the lines and folds and creases in the cloth, enhancing the effect achieved by the first layer. From here, I next decided to tackle all the remaining base coats in one pass before moving onto the washes and highlights. Many of these remaining areas would share steps with others, so it made sense to group them together. I kicked this off with some Banshee Brown, which I use as a base coat for all of the leather areas, such as the pouches, straps, boots, and bags. To give the model a really strong pop of colour, I decided to paint both the power fist and the plume of hair of the sheath sword with some Blood Moon Red. This is also a speed paint like the earlier Turnbull Turquoise, so I was able to really easily apply a single coat to achieve a vibrant red finish. Following this, I then moved on to the metallics. For the areas of steel, I used some heavy metal, before switching to Emperor Gold to pick out all of the brass and gold details. Following this, I made sure to switch out my paint water to prevent any cross-contamination of metal flakes. Now, you may have noticed that some areas had been left unpainted, notably the skin and the armor. Both of these areas would have their Dead Albit's primer color subtly adjusted with washes, but I had made a few overspills with my previous steps. Fortunately, Dead Albit is color matched to Games Workshop's Rackor Flesh, Army Painter's Gargoyle Grey, and Tooth and Coat Griffin Claw, so you can paint over those mistakes quite easily. For my slip-ups, I used some Griffin Claw. With my mistakes resolved, I turned my attention to the skin. To start off, I used some warm skin tone as a wash over all of the bare skin. While nowhere near as strong as the speed paints, this wash gently stained the pale surface to give it a more familiar skin tone, whilst also flowing into and darkening down all those strong creases in the Barbarian's flesh. This effect was pushed even further as I created a mixture of the warm skin tone and a tiny dash of Blood Moon Red. The resulting mixture was a much more intense than the previous wash, and so it had to be used more sparingly. This time around, I targeted my application directly into the recesses and cracks, further deepening the detail whilst also adding a hint of raw, reddish hue. The armor was much more straightforward. I simply gave all the various panels a coat of Voodoo Shade, which left me with a slight greenish brown hue across the pale panels. I also applied these same steps across the skulls that I had added to the base earlier. Finally, to give the hand a more necrotic pallor, I applied a mixture of Voodoo Shade and warm skin tone. To help add a little more sepia tone to the model, along with some extra detail, I used some Grim Rust across the steel details. This particular paint contains a slight texture that, as the paint dries, leaves behind a natural-looking rusty surface. My final wash was Grim Dark Shadow, which is more of a black tone, and this was used across the darker details of the model. This included the steel details, the leather, and the power fist. With all of my washes complete, I could make a start on the highlights. To create a lighter edge color for the leather details, I created a mixture of the original Banshee Brown with some Ivory White. This was then applied across all of the raised edges and creases of the leather areas. For the red power fist, I used some Fiery Vermilion, before returning to the original metallic colors for those areas' highlights. I started out with more heavy metal to give the rusty surfaces a sharp, scratch surface edge, and then gave the brass areas a highlight of Emperor Gold. When it came to highlighting the skin, the Ivory White alone would have been too bright in comparison to the current skin, so I decided to darken it down just a little by mixing in some warm skin shade first. After I'd applied an initial highlight, I then picked out just a few of the most prominent points with pure Ivory White. A similar method was used across the armor too. I began by mixing together some ivory white with some voodoo shade and used this to highlight the lower facing point of the armor before switching to ivory white alone to pick out the more prominent edges. And with that, the model was done, which meant I could turn my attention back to the base. This was quite straightforward, and I kept the warm tone going by coating everything with some sandy desert texture paste from AK Interactive. After allowing the paste to dry, I then applied another wash of warm skin tone. This helped to bring out the sandy texture whilst retaining that warmer look. In order to create the effect of shadows around the larger rocks, I went a little heavier around these areas, resulting in a slightly deeper looking shadow. The texture of the base was then further emphasized with a light dry brush of ivory white. And with that, it was just a case of adding those final few details. I cleaned up the base rim with a matte black acrylic marker from AK, gave everything a coat of matte varnish to remove any glossy surfaces and to protect the paintwork, and added a few final tufts to the base, specifically these dune shrub tufts from the Siege Scenics range. And with that, I was left with this. So here we have the finished Techno Barbarian, painted in a John Blanche inspired scheme. I personally tried to avoid the more crusty, grimdark heavy style of painting and tried to mainly stick to recreating those earthy tones you often see in his work. I also really enjoyed tackling a model from the Unification Wars era, so if you'd like to see me take on some Thunder Warriors, Imperial Army, or one of the many other Techno Barbarian factions and tribes, then let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to build this model for yourself, I'll include some links to the kits and paints that I use down in the description, along with some affiliate links to where you can get your own. I've also partnered with Warhouse, so if you're in Australia, New Zealand, or any country for that matter and are looking for some discounted Warhammer, be sure to follow my links to them down below. But before I go, I would like to give all of my Patreon supporters and channel members a huge thank you. YouTube isn't always the most reliable source of income, so having that combined support from my channel members and patrons is just amazing, and it really is thanks to you that you're watching this very video. Even if you're not able to support me financially, just by sticking around this far into the video, leave me a like and subscribing, you're doing a massive amount to support me in making more kit bashes like this. But if you would like to help out, you can check out my website, sparepartsemporium.com, and pick up one of my Dead Animal Bits or Sorcerer's Spoils kits that I used in this video, or you too can become a patron supporter or channel member. Supporters get early access to ad-free videos, exclusive merchandise, and even your name in the credits. Simply follow my Patreon link below or hit the join button. Just like my top Patreon supporters did, who are Andrew Marston, Ban Yavrin, Berserker, Dakota Kaburi, Daniel Dowling, David Ernst, David Smith, George Canzini Roberts, Little Templar, Matt Mini Minute, No Name, Quest Knight 59, Sam Sefavida, Son of Sevatar, Swedsman, Tim, and Zeth27. And my top channel members, who are Andrew Chell, Ben Glover, Bon Johnson, Chris Toomey, Dante, Dave, Doug H, Guy Brizant, High Marshall Creed, Jacob Goldsmith, John Gibbs, Kaiser Waffle 11, Larry811, Liminal Journey, Mark Taylor, Misa Pogon, Donington Paints, Panzercast 32, Patrick K, Philip Poya, Rhino Shaughnessy, SO, TTS Dark Arts, The Sire Acquired, and Whale Tussler. So until next time, thanks for watching, and goodbye.